Hey guys, it's Kevin here. This is probably going to be the last episode of Left at the Valley. I'm taking the show on a hiatus for a while. Despite all the things that have been going on in my life personally, the whole coronavirus thing, and we've just come on 6 years of Left at the Valley, so we've had a good run. I'm not saying I'm putting the show indefinitely on hiatus here. If the audience comes out and says, no, we want you guys to continue doing this kind of show, then we will, but I need to hear that from you. So send us a message if you want us to continue the show. Tonight's episode is a bit of a different one and a difficult one for myself. This is going to be Nancy's last episode. Nancy has been with us for at least 5 years, and she's been kind of like the mascot of the show. You know, we've given her the persona of the immortal Jew assassin of legend, and we've run with that gag for quite a while. But even Nancy, in all her amazing energy that she has, she's always been like the little big sister I've always had, and Nancy's on her last legs, unfortunately. She's suffering from lung cancer. So what I did is I wanted Nancy to talk about, well, she offered to talk about what she was going through. And the episode before this was supposed to be an episode with Dave Warnock, and he suffers from ALS. That fell through. The last 2-3 episodes have actually fallen through. We've experienced technical difficulties, and I'm glad that this one went through tonight. So what I did is I essentially threw an invitation out there to a whole bunch of people, guests from the past, and that have touched Nancy in a way, and her presence has touched them as well. And we're going to be discussing stupid thing. We're going to be discussing death. So it might be a bit of a warning. This might be a bit of a heavy topic for you guys. But anyway, I hope you enjoy this maybe last episode of Left at the Valley.
Hi, this is Seth Andrews. I'm host of the Thinking Atheist podcast. A special message here for Nancy, especially in light of the recent news, and I know that you're getting a lot of well-wishing from a lot of different people. It's interesting, I was talking to a friend recently about the temporary nature of this life, and how, on some level, I know it is attractive to think about an afterlife, you know, and heaven and those types of things. When I was a devout believer, it was attractive in many ways to think about a place where there is, life 2.0 and perfect peace, and we are reunited with everybody that we've loved and lost on this earth. It's paradise, you know. In that context, it's easy to understand why so many people hold to some notion of heaven. But, you know, we as rationalists, we as people who hear the claims of, moving on to another plane somewhere, and understanding that there's really no basis for that, and understanding the nature of the brain and belief and, the utility, how we've often coped with our fears of death by constructing these happy endings. Many of us have found a moment of liberation because we get to refocus ourselves on this life. We get to focus ourselves on the moment-by-moment interactions with our fellow human beings, our brothers and sisters on this earth. We get to really experience the pure joys, the unadulterated joys of being alive, and appreciate the fact that we beat the odds. We likely, statistically, should have never been born, but we beat the odds. And we get to breathe the air. We get to feel the sun upon our faces. We get to live and laugh and love and experience this life. And, if it's temporary, it's still a beautiful and wonderful thing. It's still amazing to have connected in the way we've connected, as the universe expressing itself for just a short period of time, as the saying goes. Someone asked me, well, if you don't live forever, doesn't that cheapen life? And I think just the opposite. I think The idea that every moment is brief and fleeting and temporary and the clock is ticking, this makes every second so much more critical. I like to say that every vacation has a final day. Every delicious meal has a last bite. Every piece of music has a final note. Are these things not worth enjoying and experiencing because they don't last forever? Or is it their temporary nature that makes it so amazing, that makes it so precious, that makes it worth embracing? Your life is an amazing thing. Your legacy is an amazing thing. And while I hold out every hope that you are going to be one of those people who beats the odds and is able to be with us for much, much longer than is expected, know this, that your life has rippled outward. I mean, every day you have been alive has been a rippling outward of your heart and your mind and your thoughts and your attitudes and your activism, and this has impacted who knows how many people. And in that way, I guess we all continue to live on. We live on through our children, yes, but we also live on through the ripple effect that we have in other people that we interact with every single day. Our parents, our children, our siblings, our neighbors, our coworkers, our audiences, our friends, the people that we just bump into on the street. You never know the impact that you have had, but know that you have had an impact and continue to today. In fact, this gathering of friends should be a reminder to you of just how important you are. Much love from Natalie and me. Big hugs from me and my audience. And just know that we've got your back and we love you very much.
Hey there, heathens. I'm John, the Godless Engineer.
Hi, I'm Aron.
Hi, this is Andrew Jasko.
This is Don Queen from the Godless Heathens podcast.
Hello, I'm Dr. Hector Garcia.
Hi, this is Owen from Rex and Owen and the Skeptical Texan.
Hey, I'm Stephen Woodford of Rationality Rules.
Hi, I'm Thomas Westbrook of Holy Kool-Aid.
Hi, this is Matt Dillahunty.
Hi, this is Brent and Nikki from Unapologetics.
Hi, I'm Donald Trump, and I took a rip. Wait, one second. I gotta put my hands up here.
Yeah, just go ahead, Robert. Just go.
Hi, I'm Robert Stanley of the Right to Reason podcast, and
I took a left at the valley.
And we... Oh, should I say it too? No,
sure.
I know we shouldn't have to scream that we're atheists. You know, we don't have non-astrologers and all that. But with the religious people taking over the world, I mean, we can either speak up or be pushed into a corner.
I'm proud to be an atheist, a skeptic, a non-believer, an infidel, a heathen. I call it how I see it. I say it's ignorance and you just call it faith and unsubstantiated claims. That's something to be ashamed. I'm an atheist.
Coming at you one last time from BC, this is Left of the Valley. My name is Kevin, and I am your host tonight. As usual, this is going to be an interesting show, guys. Like I said at the beginning of the show, this is probably going to be the last Left of the Valley for a while because of all the things that are going on. But today, we're talking death. Not just only death of the show, but death in general. And I've got something going on tonight that's interesting. The show is going to be non-edited. What you're going to hear is exactly how the conversation went. I'm not going to edit anything. I'm just going to put it as how it was essentially played. And hopefully you'll indulge me in that. In the meantime, I'd like to start, since we're talking about death, let's talk about probably one of the best quotes about death I've heard is from Professor Dawkins himself. He said, "We are going to die, and that makes us the lucky ones. Most people are never going to die because they are never going to be born. The potential people who could have been here in my place, but who will in fact never see the light of day, outnumber the grains of sands in Arabia. Certainly those unborn ghosts include greater poets than Keats and scientists greater than Newton. We know this because of the set of possible people allowed by our DNA so massively exceeds the set of people, of actual people. In the teeth of these stupefying odds, it is you and I, in our ordinariness, that are here. We privileged few who won the lottery of birth against all odds. How dare we whine at our inevitable return to that prior state from which the vast majority have never stirred? And I think that's a very, very apt way. Death is one of those topics that is taboo in general in our society. But although it's not taboo in the atheist society, I think it's a topic that sometimes we're ill-prepared for. It seems so much easier as a believer to say oh yeah, she's in a better place now, and the finality of death is not so, it's just an illusion, and the party continues. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this last episode. I hope you've enjoyed the 6 years that we've put in the show. It's been, it has changed my life dramatically. If not for this little show, there's a ton of fabulous people that are going to be on the show tonight, and some people that I've never would have met, some people I've never would have had the pleasure of talking to. I've interviewed intellectual giants. I've interviewed legends in the public sphere. You talk about people like, Lawrence Krauss, Rich Dawkins, Aron Ra, scientists of all kinds, whether it's Dr. Ben Davis, Dr. Garcia, all the scientists we've had on, Jerry Coyne, etc. The list is too huge to even think of all these interviews we had. James Randi, the magician James Randi, a legend in his own making, who's still around, and I had probably one of the highlights of my 6 years of doing this. But one of the biggest highlights as well that I sometimes don't think about, and we don't really express as much, was to be able to do this with Nancy, who's been with me for 5 years. Nancy has been the rock I've been relying on. She's just been consistent. She was like 99% of the time there, no matter what. And when you do a podcast, and podcasters out there will know, that is incredibly precious. And she's become, for lack of a better term, the soul of the show. She's a bit of our little mascot. And now Nancy is not going to be able to be part of the show anymore. And to be quite honest, I don't know if I can continue this show without her. If the Left at the Valley comes back, and part of me hope it does, I'll come back as a different animal. But I will also want to let the audience decide that fate. So I want you guys to let me know. Send me a message me on Facebook, message me on Twitter, message me on leftatvalley@outlook.com. Send me an email. The domain leftatvalley.com is already non-functional. This has been draining my pockets, this venture, but I've been doing it for the pleasure. I never went to this podcast thing with the idea that we'd become rich and famous. Yeah, it would have been nice, of course, but our philosophy from the day one was always to let people know that, one, they are not alone, and that rising tides lifts all ships. That's why we always featured other podcasters as well on our show. Even though sometimes we were not featured on theirs, but it doesn't matter. The point was, we wanted to show that, by all these great people out there, that for the average listener, the average person that sometimes are not sure about their whole world, that we were there for them, and a lot of other people were there going through the same trials. And none of this would have been very possible without Nancy. If I had to do this show by myself, it'd be a crapshoot of a show. It wouldn't be nowhere near what it is. So Nancy's always been an integral part of this, and this is going to be extremely hard to continue on without her, not just as a podcaster, but also in my life, because she's been a friend, a confidant. She's family. So, sorry, I'm a bit choked up. So this episode is going to be called Thank You, Nancy. And let me just play the episode as it went. Hope you enjoy. Exactly what's going on here. So I guess we only got 20 minutes left before the rest of the crew joins in. So I'm not sure how much of the show you guys actually want to do here.
Okay, Kirsten and Christina, say something, because I haven't. Kevin, you're a little bit You're a little bit fuzzy.
Am I fuzzy?
Christina, say something so I can hear you.
Okay. Hi. Can you hear this?
Yeah.
Okay.
And Kirsten?
Yeah, I'm right here.
Yeah, your mic is clear, and Christina's, when I start talking to other people, I'm not going to be able to hear them, and that wouldn't work at all, would it? Okay, let's do it.
Yeah, when we talk to other people, it's going to be the same thing. We're going to hear it's going to be pretty much like this anyway, so.
Okay, we've got to think positively in terms of this not being the last show. This is us. This is who we are. Once a week, we get to be unfettered in ourselves. So Kevin, can you rethink this so that we can make it work?
Well, yeah, like I said, I'm open to the possibility. But, like I said, right now with the whole coronavirus and me losing my job and a whole bunch of things like that, I mean, right now it's just...
It's the last show for now.
Yeah, exactly. The last show for now.
We're going on hiatus.
Yeah, I could not have put it better myself.
Okay. But we need to keep in touch anyway.
Yeah, of course. All right, so I guess, I don't know, you guys want to pick up what we normally do? Or, I don't know, Nancy, do you have a top 10 or anything? Or what do you got?
Well, yeah, but that seems like so trivial at this point. What do you set up for? Are you doing chit chat? Are you doing brilliant moment? What are we doing for 20 minutes?
I did not set up chit chat at all because I thought that this was going to be a different kind of show, and the only well let's do that because I think let's do a regular chit chat because I think the only thing we can really talk about is
the coronavirus.
Exactly.
Yeah, and that's
the only thing that's pretty much in the news.
That kind of ties into what I'm dealing with too because it's like every single headline that I've read, it's like 1, 2, 3.
Are we recording already?
Yes, we are recording.
So is this going to be part of the show?
Sure, it is now.
Oh God. Our poor listeners. I'm so sorry for you people.
You know what? They've been through so much with us.
We had to torture them one last time.
I'm so sorry.
Anyway, so what about that coronavirus? Jeez.
I'm not handling it well.
How's that?
Emotionally, mentally, a lot of trauma in my childhood involved being isolated. Not interacting with people, and also a lot of trauma happened over online. So now that's how I have to do my therapy and stuff, and it's not going well.
And I'm with you every step of the way.
And I've just been kind of shut down a lot. Yeah.
I think we can all say
for
that
a month. It's not been good.
Well, something we got to say that our response, our Canadian response, as compared to the American,
it's so
vastly superior. America's really dropping the ball on this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I think they're about on the verge of surpassing China.
They already have.
They already have.
Oh, they did it yesterday, morning.
For once, America is number one, and it's not a good thing.
They surpassed them about 2 days ago.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Though, sorry, that was loud. You also have to take into consideration that China isn't reporting their numbers anymore.
Yeah, fair enough.
So,
but apparently there's also the news that came out that there were no new cases in the Wuhan province. Yeah. So that's pretty much.
But you also have to realize China isn't a country that is necessarily going to be open with that information.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to take it with a slight grain of salt. But I think that them being a authoritarian, crazy country, they were set up to deal with it better because they could just tell everyone, "Don't leave your house; you're going to get shot."
Yeah,
Yeah, where in America, people are like,
freedom!
Exactly. So America, people don't take science seriously. They're especially with Trump being it's just the common flu.
And let's not even talk about the religious side of things.
Yeah.
Okay. Praying is not going to make it better. Yes, we can.
Yeah, we can, Nancy.
Okay. You have to remember that if Obama was president, that the U.S. would have been ready because they had everything in place. So the reason the U.S. is sinking at this point and behind the curve is because Trump and the administration removed all of the supply chains, all of the agencies that could deal with this, and then they cut budgets. So this is a 100% result of incompetence and greed and politics. If everything had been exactly the way it was when Trump took office, the U.S. wouldn't have been in this problem. And they wouldn't have had a president that said, I'm not talking to these governors because they're not appreciative. This is horrible. This is 100% driven by this madman who's in charge.
Yeah, it's really depressing. Just like realizing how many people are going to die because of Trump. Like there was already a lot of people dying because of Trump, and it's just like there's so much more.
Yeah, and I'm really at the depressing. Top. I'm at the top of the sacrificial list. Exactly. I am. I'm 83. I have cancer. So if I was in the U.S. and there was a ventilator going past my bed, they just keep on going. Yeah. And give it, and they'd give it to somebody younger and stronger and healthier, and the hell with grandma. I mean, I understand it, and I probably would say, if asked, you give that respirator to someone who has more years to go, because I've only got a couple of months, I'm dying anyway. But it's not the administration driving the choices, you know, of let's sacrifice the old vulnerable people, you know, because we'll save a lot of money in Social Security too. Yeah. I mean, it's a political decision.
Yeah, it's kind of sad that to think that, you know, the human heart has been replaced by the collective wallet of people. Yeah. You know, this and this throws into sharp contrast the failure of the capitalist system. Really, the failure that, you know,
100% fuck capitalism.
Free market is not going to pull you out of this.
No.
Free market is not going to
oh my god. Like, capitalism is the worst thing to have when you're dealing with a pandemic, because the corporations are just like, fuck it, work. I don't care if you die, I'll hire somebody else. But then you see socialist countries that have a socialist society, they're actually caring about each other, and they're like, okay, you know what, we'll get through this together. Like, look at Canada. Yes, we're capitalist, but we have a stronger socialist bent. And we're all like, okay, you know what, we're in this together. People are social distancing out the wazoo.
Except for those few dumbasses that are walking around.
I judge them so hard. I'm like, you are not 6 feet apart.
Oh, God. She's not lying. She really does.
Yeah. And and a lot of people have, I know in our community, have actually been like, we understand that yes, you might not be sick, you might not be at a high risk of dying or like having complications, but you aren't the only one around. You have to live life during this pandemic like you're carrying the virus and like you can infect other people. So you have to like protect everybody.
You kind of have to support each other by staying away from each other.
And so Kirsten, what are you doing at work? What is management doing at work to help protect all of you guys and the customers?
Well, like the particular position I'm in, I'm lucky because I'm overnight, so I don't actually interact with any customers. I only see some of the very early morning people that come in. But what they've done is they've taped off 6-foot sections on the floor for customers to line up. They've put up face shields. We have disinfectant wipes that we can use to wipe down our carts and all that. They're limiting the number of customers in the stores. They've got hand sanitizer and all of that. They are even limiting like what doors they come through because we have multiple entrances. So they're definitely doing what they can to keep like us as safe as possible. And I know that we're not the only place that's doing that. Other places like Superstore have put up like the shields at the checkouts and things like that. And it's really kind of all we can do.
Yeah. Christina, anything in particular? You're
Literally
pretty much by
nothing
yourself.
has changed.
Yeah.
Well, you work with cows, so.
I work with cows. I try to make sure that I don't closely interact with one of my bosses because he's like in his 80s. So like I don't want to give him anything.
Because we understand that even though you're not around a lot of people, I am around more people, and even though it's still a limited number of people,
there's still a chance you get infected, then I get infected.
Exactly,
and
because
I don't want him to get infected. Because he's
so
old.
when you guys are out shopping, are you wearing gloves? Do you have any wipes to wipe down?
I don't go into stores.
Parts?
I just stay in the car.
Yeah, usually only I've been going into the stores. Unfortunately, I don't have any gloves or wipes. I do have hand sanitizer that I put on, and I'll grab it there if it's available at the checkout to use. But people went a little panicky with buying things, so now we're waiting for them to restock.
Yeah, it's been hard.
I've had
seeing
people
all the panic buying.
Yeah, since I'm self-isolating, I have people, some friends who are shopping for me, and which is really nice. It's interesting, though, when you put down things on your grocery list that you think are, easy for people to see. It's not, because they decide that they're going to get you what's there sometimes rather than what you've asked for. So I never quite know what's going to come back. For instance, I put down on one of my lists that I wanted Deli World rye bread because I really like that rye bread. So there wasn't any, and my shopper decided she was just going to get me any rye bread because to her it didn't make any difference. So I got some really strange rye bread that I don't like, and it's like, oh man, I don't dare complain. And then I got sweet onions instead of regular onions. And then I got a package of lunch meat rather than deli meat. So I never know what's going to come back. It's an adventure in eating. But I really appreciate everybody, going out and doing this for me. But then the other interesting part of it is, what do I touch and what do I not touch? Is the bag okay to touch? Can I touch the cereal box? Do I have to touch the cereal box, take the cereal out, put it on the shelf, use hand sanitizer, and then go to the next item? That's where I'm really getting, okay, I'm protecting myself, but am I overly concerned?
I think so.
I
think that's a tad paranoid.
I 100% get it, because obviously for those of you that don't know, I work freight, so I stock shelves. So I literally touch everything that I put away. We do wear work gloves, but sometimes you do have to take them off to do whatever.
Yeah, but I mean, come on. I think you guys are maybe blowing this a bit out of proportion. I know this is a scary virus, but you got to remember, this is not an airborne virus, one.
Yeah,
so everybody wearing what's that?
It can survive in the air.
Yeah, I know, but it's not airborne, right? In other words, somebody coughs in your face, yes. But I mean, no, it drops to the ground like everything else, right? It's a surface contact, right? So even if you surface in contact something that somebody with coronavirus would have coughed on, with the odds right there, I think, are slim. And then, of course, on top of that, if you don't wash your hands at all, and then put them on the mucous membranes of your face, then you're exposing yourself to the virus and the virus taking hold. But I think those are a lot of different steps. I think if you practice proper hygiene, you wash your hands on a regular basis, put your work gloves on when you're handling freight or something like that, and you're not always put your hands in your face and licking stuff, I think you'll be perfectly fine.
Oh, you mean we're not supposed to lick doorknobs?
I had to stop licking people myself, too. I had to stop licking doorknobs and people. It's a great habit of mine, but, I had to stop doing that now.
The day you have to stop licking people.
Well, Kevin, are you practicing safe distance?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I wear at least 6 feet of condoms between me and every person that I see in front of me. Yeah, of course. I try to keep a certain distance. That's why I keep Christina and Kirsten really far away right now. No, they're just...
We're all social distancing right now.
Even at work, we've done that too. We've stopped even having meetings.
Yeah.
One of the things that I find troubling is that we have no idea in Abbotsford what how many people have come down with the virus. And I now the health department, Bonnie Henry, who is in charge as the leading health officer, feels as though that's okay. She doesn't want people to be afraid to come forward, and she's afraid if they publish how many cases there are, people will stop coming forward to be tested. And I disagree, because I think if you don't see what's going on in Abbotsford, you're going to get overly confident and say, oh, it hasn't reached us yet. And so you're going to be tempted, to stay closer to other people or not wash your hands as much, because I have not seen one statistic about anybody in Abbotsford getting the virus. I've heard stories of people who might have had it, but I don't see anything statistically. Is that just bugging me, or is anybody else concerned about that?
Well, you got to remember, there's been what is it now, 1,900 somewhat cases in the entire country. So it's quite possible that there's no cases in Abbotsford per se.
No, there is
more than 1,000, isn't there?
Or is it a 1,900 death?
I can't remember.
I'd have to look, but it's
no. We've only had like 50-something deaths.
Yeah,
we haven't had very many.
Yeah, so it's last I saw the stats that I saw, I was really watching something this morning. It was like almost 2,000 cases across the entire nation.
The thing is, though, BC is the hotspot.
It is. It is one of the hotspots, but BC is also BC is also big, right?
It's all the Fraser, the Lower Mainland, and Vancouver.
I can understand being cautious and using proper hygiene, but to think that there's the virus hiding around every corner, I think is overblown. I think if we're just being diligent here, but let's not take it to the point that the apocalypse as soon as you go outside you're infected or something.
I think the biggest thing to remember in times like this is don't panic.
Yeah.
To quote the words
of
Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
I think we're going to know in 1 month's time whether we've been overly precautious or, cavalier in our thinking, because the way this is spreading, it's bound, I would say within the next 21, 22 days, it's bound to hit us with a number of people going through from one province to the other, truck drivers, people coming and going. So it may seem like we're on the edge now, but I think probably within the next month we'll see where we are. Hopefully we'll still be low, and we won't peak the way a lot of other cities in North America have. Let's just hope.
Yeah.
Let's hope by June or July, we'll be over the first wave of this, and then see where we can go.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. Also, it's going to be able to see. I think that within 3-4 months this is going to be done. I think, and I hope, and I think that the next month is going to be the crucial one. And I also think that it's going to be interesting to see 4, 5, 6 months from now what kind of an impact it actually had on our society as a whole. Are we going to develop new ways of being much more hygienic with people? Are we going to be, is the economy going to take a turn for something else entirely, right? Are we going to turn much more socialistic in our country
I hope so.
as far as the economy is concerned? What are the Americans going to react to? How are they going to view this? It's going to be very, very interesting, and we do live in interesting times. There's no doubt about that.
And I think one of the scary things, at least for me, that I think kind of sits in the back of my mind and causes me a fair deal of stress, even if it's not always at the front of my mind, is not knowing exactly what's going to be happening tomorrow. Because I know even Christina and I have taken precautions in that, not knowing what's going to happen in a couple of months, and have postponed our wedding because that is a gathering. It's less than 50 people, but we have people coming that would be
extremely at risk.
Yeah. Extremely at risk of catching it, and we are not willing to risk
their lives
for our wedding.
You made the right call 100%. I mean, I'm sorry that all the plans that you made and the venue and everything that you like, but it'll be much better on the other side, knowing that, your life has gone on, your friends are okay,
exactly.
You prevented anybody from being exposed, and then the celebration, will be bigger and better than ever.
Exactly. And luckily for us, the vendors and that we have had. I've contacted them all, and they've all been extremely gracious with us and have allowed us to book it for the date that we want. So all of our stuff is pretty much already rebooked.
Yeah, exactly. Perfect.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, thank you for the chat, ladies. So right now we're going to switch to our conversation with a whole bunch of atheists.
Boy.
Nancy, stay online here. I want to see what happens if I make that call here, if you're just going to join automatically, which I think you will.
Oh, God, if you disappear, I don't know whether I can ever get myself back on or not.
Well, right now I've got Robert Stanley here.
I'm not touching anything.
I've got Robert Stanley. I've got Seamus for the Free Thought Prophets. I've got Matthew Maxon, Darrel Ray, Brent Lee, Tracie Harris, Aron Raw, Hector Garcia, and John as well. So let's quickly do a call and see what happens.
Oh, this should be interesting.
Hello.
Hey.
Hey.
Hello.
Perfect.
Hello. It's Darrel. Hey.
Hi, Darrel.
I got Darrel there. Hi, Darrel. Let's see Darrel on the camera.
You're the only one doing video. Okay, there's somebody else doing video.
Do we want to turn the cameras on, guys? I mean, we could do that, but I mean, it just might need a lot of bandwidth.
Yeah, I was doing it with them off. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's turn the cameras on.
Our internet is not great.
All right.
Okay.
All right, there it goes. There goes the IC.
I'm trying to call Nancy here. Matthew, turn the camera off.
Turn the camera off?
Yeah, you're getting too much bandwidth. I don't want to see your mug anyway.
And for everyone, this is how you hang out with your friends when you're all in quarantine.
I kind of dressed up for you guys.
Oh.
Well, we could have the prettiest of us still stay on camera, so Darrel, turn yours back on.
I was going to say, but the camera only faces Kevin.
Simply wearing clothes is not dressing up, Darrel.
Well, at least he's wearing clothes.
Yeah, we usually end up doing the show.
I'm dressed from the waist up. You got a problem with that?
Well, we've been in lockdown for about a week in Illinois, so yeah, you're lucky I put on clothes at all.
Yeah, I've been on lockdown and having to cook at home, but fortunately the only time that I really have fits of sneezing and coughing is when I'm seasoning the chili.
That's a plus.
Chili.
That's good.
I think that's kind of a crazy thing that even though we're from all over, we're all kind of going through this together.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
Yeah, that is fascinating.
Goodness gracious, I'm still missing. I'm trying to get Nancy online here. We had her like 2 minutes ago, and
oh no,
Nancy's dropped off here, which kind of sucks because she's the guest of honor.
Nancy.
Yeah.
Oh, come on, Nancy.
Well, we can do it without her. I mean, come on. We're professionals.
I'm sorry, did you just say we're professionals? Since when?
I'm here.
All right,
Hi,
who's here?
Amy.
Finally.
Nancy, are you there? Nancy?
Yeah, don't anybody answer that voice. That's my parrot.
Okay.
That was Nancy.
Oh, is
I
that
was like,
Max?
who's yelling?
Yep.
Oh, I love Max.
Oh, shit.
Do I have Nancy on? Nancy, are you on? Yes, no? Nancy? I don't hear Nancy.
I don't hear Nancy.
Oh,
I don't
says,
see her up at the top.
Says Nancy, why is unavailable? Come on, Nancy. Get through.
Nancy.
I thought when I heard the parrot sound, I thought it was Nancy, and I'm like, lean into the mic a little. Jeez. Come on, Nancy.
Oh, man. Hold on, see if I can message her. Nancy, where are you?
Oh, don't sneeze.
No, but you disappeared.
You guys aren't meeting up at your house anymore, Kev?
We actually are.
We are.
Well, Kirsten and Christina are here.
Nancy is
Nancy decided to self-isolate.
Yeah, because she's her immune system is
she's smart.
at risk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She doesn't.
Are the three of you sitting 6 feet apart?
I don't know about Kevin and me. We're more like 5 feet.
Yeah, at least 5.
I mean, we're close.
Kirsten and I are definitely 6.
Which is ironic because we live together, so we actually don't need to be 6 feet
Hold
apart.
the measuring tape. Be like, okay, guys.
If we have to be 6 feet apart at home, you're sleeping on the couch.
Okay.
But your dog is not.
Okay, that's fair.
Jeez. All right, roll call. Who do I have here? I've got Robert, I've got Amy, I've got other Amy. Who else do I have? I've got Aron, Matthew, Darrel. Tracie, you on?
Yes, I'm on.
Okay, perfect. So, am I missing anybody? Who am I missing here?
Brent and Nikki.
Oh, there, Brent and Nikki. Perfect. Awesome.
Oh, man.
Okay.
Hey. Robert.
Hector's here
Missed
as well.
you.
So, which one was Amy and which one was other Amy?
That's what I was asking, too.
Very, very important.
You are other Amy.
I'm about to hang up.
But to make it even more confusing, if there's other Amy and then you're another Amy.
I'm regular Amy.
No, you're not regular.
I'm Amy Classic.
I'm new
Hamil
Coke.
improved.
Yep, you're new Coke.
I'm clear Pepsi.
Clear Pepsi.
I think it was
God
Crystal
damn it.
Pepsi. Yeah.
I don't know. I'm too young to remember that.
Do you guys remember? Do you remember
Nancy says
Surge?
call again.
It was like a green drink.
No, none of us remember Surge. Yes, of course.
Oh, that was
Like,
the
how old is
best.
everybody here? What?
And then everybody told me the yellow 5 in it would make your penis shrink, and I stopped drinking it because I'm like, I don't have anything to lose.
Well, that's scientific.
I'm not taking
heard
any
that one, too.
chances.
Can you hear me?
Nancy, you're there. Yay!
All right.
No. Okay,
Watch
I
his
dropped.
Skype
I
crashes.
dropped off when you put everybody. Hi, everybody. Love you all.
Hi, Nancy.
Okay.
I think I'm gonna die at least twice a year so we can have a reunion.
Right? I'm like, why didn't we think of this sooner?
That's what it takes to bring us all together. This is the first time I'm dying, so this is a practice. But I'm really going to get good at this. So I'm looking forward to several Nancy death reunions.
Perfect. Sounds good. Now, everybody,
Y'all are looking good.
Everybody, I really want to thank you guys for all coming here. Nancy had no idea I was doing this, by the way. So this is a complete surprise to her. She had no idea you guys were all coming on, and I really want to thank you for doing this because this is, after all, the last show that we're doing for Left of the Valley for probably quite a while, if not forever. We've been going on for 6 years now, actually.
Yeah.
6 years, almost today, and since our immoral assassin Nancy is about to go on her permanent vacation, I thought I'd give her the mic and let her explain and what she's going through. And I know that you guys have all touched her in many, many ways, and some ways inappropriate, of course. And
I said sorry.
I thought we'd have a great conversation about what it's like to for us as atheists to encounter death and face death and how we handle it. So, Nancy, I guess you're the guest of honor. So you go ahead, dear, and you do your thing. You explain what's going on with you.
Oh, that's such a good topic. There's nothing like handing the baton off to an 83-year-old lady dying of lung cancer and then saying, make it exciting and interesting and insightful for us. Man, oh man.
Oh, of course.
It's a good thing I'm crazy enough to take on the challenge. Right? So,
kind of things that Kevin expects from us.
So while you're living, life happens and interferes.
Who's eating chips?
Plans. You know, Kevin, are you eating chips?
Somebody's eating chips.
Someone
me.
is definitely eating potatoes.
So
it's Brentley. I bet you it's Brent.
Get your shit together, podcasters.
This is the kind of professionalism I expect from all of you at this point.
You started the chip gags.
I hope whoever doing it opens the bag and they end up all over the couch.
Sorry, Nancy, I interrupted you there.
Okay, so about 5 years ago, I developed a cough that turned out to be a small adenocarcinoma in my right lung, and I had SBRT, which is a high-dosage radiation therapy that's supposed to zap those kinds of tumors out of existence. But unfortunately, there are some people where it doesn't work all that well, and that's what happened with me. It zapped part of the tumor, but either right after or during, or there was part of the tumor that was lurking in a hidden space. It metastasized into. It was all contained into my right lung. but it metastasized into the lining. And for about 5 years, I was really lucky because it never bothered me except a little tiredness. But, I'm getting old, so a little tiredness and hanging onto those Uzis, especially on some of those night jobs. You figure, you're going to be a little weak. You're going to have to, take a little stimulant here and there to get you back up to speed, especially when you got a reputation like mine. So I didn't pay a whole lot of attention to it, but I felt lucky in that I could really do what I wanted to do. And I got a lot of people mad at me because I never said anything. I told my immediate family because 5 years before I had breast cancer and never told them. And they threatened to kill me if I didn't tell them the next time that I had any kind of a health problem and didn't let them in on it so they could be supportive. So I could live a little longer. I did tell them, but I didn't tell anybody else. And that was calculated on my part because for a couple of reasons. I looked well, I sounded well. I always have a forceful voice, so if they dig me up out of the ashes 10 years from now, I'll still be shouting. It just that's my nature. So I didn't want to tell anybody because I didn't want it to interfere with our normal relationships. I felt that if I tell you I have cancer, now every time you see me, you're going to think, oh, how much longer does she have? Do we say something? Do we not say something? It's awkward. And I wanted people who like me to continue to like me. I wanted people who I annoyed to continue to feel irritated. I just didn't want anything to come between the free flow of who I am and who you are. So for 5 years, I got away with it really well. And then in the last several months, cancer has a way of taking a little turn and a little twist. And so it began to advance. I think it's in the bloodstream. I think I will find out on Monday whether or not I have bone cancer or not, which means that the time that I have left to enjoy all of you and enjoy my family and my life, on this plane, that's rapidly, coming to an end. And I think of my life now in terms of months rather than years. But I'm 83 and I've had a wonderful run, so I've been able to meet and enjoy and deal with the people and events in my life that have had a lot of importance to me, and to be able to have enjoyed them for this long and be in good health has been a miracle. It really has, and I appreciate all the time that I've had, and I appreciate all the time that I have left. So as an atheist, I can approach this in a couple of ways. As an atheist, I believe that, and taking my Jewish background, I believe that this is the world that we have. There may or may not be other things in the great beyond, but this is what we have. This is what we make the most of. This is where, if I'm going to live on anywhere, I'm going to live on in your memory. That's my legacy. And for me to be able to live on in your memory, I want it to be a good, solid, friendly memory. I want to be kind. I want to be compassionate. I want to be funny. I want to be all the things that you want in a good friend, because then I will live on in such a pleasant way within your memory and your heart that my life will have been worthwhile. And I think that's probably the highest plane that anyone can reach in this life, is to make an impact, a positive impact. Go ahead and be, I can be mad and neurotic and all of those things, but I know I will be forgiven because I mean well, and I do. And I know that the kindness that I show and the happiness that I show comes back to me 17,000-fold, so that I'm a better person because of you, and you will keep my memory going. And smile, because it may give you just a tiny little place during the day when you think, that Nancy wasn't such a bad girl. We would have been nice with a couple of more, but I'm lucky we had that one Nancy in my life, and that's something that really makes me feel better. Whatever it is that faces me after I'm ashes here, that makes me feel that this life has been one of enormous value and has been exceptionally worthwhile for this little Jewish atheist girl. Mm-hmm. The other thing that I did to understand death and dying a little bit better was to become a witness for Dying with Dignity. And that's an organization in the States and also up here that works with the health systems to be able to provide medical assistance in dying to those who want it. It's a choice up here, and people sign a request form to see if they're eligible to be able to receive the medical assistance in dying procedure. There are certain eligibility requirements. Your death has to be in the foreseeable future. You have to have a condition, an illness, or a disease where there is no cure. You have to be over 18. You have to totally understand that by signing the form, that when the procedure is done, that you will die. And there are about 8 or 9 questions that the person requesting the form answers, and it has to be signed by 2 witnesses. After the form is signed, then it goes into the health system, and the individual is assessed, and then it moves forward, hopefully, with smoothly, so that the person requesting it can choose the time and the day that they want to die, the day that they say, that's enough. I can no longer tolerate my life as it is here on this earth, and I'm ready to take a deep breath, throw my shoulders back, and take whatever comes. Being a witness for this organization has allowed me to accept my death in a much better way, because I've been able to deal with not only the patients who request the procedure, but the hospices, the providers, the health system, the other witnesses, the people who take care of the patients in the hospital, the social workers. I've been lucky enough to be able to go into all of the different facilities and understand how dying patients are cared for. I've been able to talk about death with the other witnesses in a calm way, in an understanding way, so that I can now open up and talk about my own death to my family and to friends. I wasn't able to really do that before. I was always hesitant. What do I say? How do I not disturb somebody's emotional state by saying, I'm sorry to have to tell you this, but it has made my conversations easier. They're still a little awkward depending on who I'm talking to, but at least I can talk about death in a calm way, in a rational way, and be able to answer questions without hesitating and without feeling as though someone is intruding about asking me.
Right.
And I think that fulfills the atheist part of me too, because I'm doing what I can to make people understand a little bit more about the life process. So, in general,
what is it?
What else would you like to know? What can I tell you?
Podcast. Stop asking me questions. Give me the answer. What is it?
We're having a moment with Aron there for a second.
What answer do you want?
Aron, your mic's not muted. Just letting you know.
I guess I want to open.
This is why you don't have kids.
I guess I want to open this up and say to all of you guys out there in podcast land there, are you even though as atheists and some of you come from religious backgrounds, some of you don't, do you guys fear death?
No.
Yeah.
No. I kind of fear the type of death, I guess, at times.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't want to die in a car crash.
I mean, that's
I'm
fair.
not afraid of being dead. It's how you get dead.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
I've already done that, so kind of led me to being an atheist. So I guess I'm not as scared as I thought I would be.
I think I like to quote Woody Allen. Says, I'm not afraid of death. I just don't want to be there when it happens.
Yeah.
That's good.
I just don't want to miss anything.
Yeah. Is it a selfish thing to think sometimes? Like the late great Christopher Hitchens used to say, it's not that the party's over. It's somebody taps you on the shoulder and says, no, you have to leave the party. Is it a selfish thing to think that you don't want this life to go on without you?
Yeah. And I think that the funny part, it's not funny, haha, but it's because we are such egotistical beings that it's hard to believe that we are conscious in 1 minute and not in the other. It's I am, I am. Therefore, what is that quote? I
think therefore I am.
I think, therefore I am. And to understand that in 1 second you're going to be thinking, and who knows in the second where you're going to be, is a wild thought. It's hard to believe you're not going to be conscious and thinking.
Mm-hmm.
At least
I have a hard time believing that because in 57 years I've never died once.
Exactly.
May I tell a fast story really fast? This is Matthew.
Of course.
So less than a month ago, my grandmother passed away. She was 96 years old. She almost made it to 97. And one of the things that I found horrifying, and Nancy, I'm so proud of you for doing it this way, dying with dignity. Don't get me wrong, my grandmother is somebody who I've loved, and she was, the last grandparent that I had. But her health had been declining seriously over several years, and so this was something I'd been thinking about off and on for the last 10, 15 years or so. I'm like, what am I going to think about when the time has come? I've lost several friends of mine. I've lost a total of 15 friends when I was in the service, some to combat, some to drinking, some to, car accidents, all kinds of stuff. But listening to my grandmother suffocate to death doing that skip breathing is something I will never, ever forget in my life. It is horrifying.
Oh.
And
I want to add something to that, if I may, if when you're done.
So I think that the dying with dignity is probably the best way to go. Excuse me for maybe my phrasing isn't very good or something, but watching my grandmother die in the hospital, we kept her comfortable and all that kind of stuff. She felt no pain, but death, it affects those of us who are surviving too. And
yes,
so it took me many, many years to get over the death of my grandfather. He passed when I was 16. And there are still times that I think, I'm like, God damn, I wish I could tell my granddad what I did today.
Yes.
And so, so the way of being able to, I think that having the option to be able to choose when you're still healthy, when you're able to go, I'm glad that she was able to recognize me before she passed away, but it was only for a few minutes, because she was lucid only for brief moments of time. And so I just want to say thank you, Nancy, for doing this. Thank you for being an advocate. And I just want to say thank you for all of it. Thank you. Thank you for being my friend.
And same here. I love you. Hey, thank you to Canada for understanding that that's the humane and compassionate way, to die. It still isn't a perfect law. It's now being reviewed to add other people on who have ALS, whose death is not foreseeable, but who ends in pain and suffocating, and all of those things. So it's coming along, but it's good at this point the law came into effect in 2016. So it's refining, but it's good to live in a country that recognizes how important that is for the individual and for the families, because I've been through that with my parents and to some extent with the grandparents, where they're going to die. No, they're okay. Well, let's get ready to go. No, it's not quite. And then the decision of who pulls the plug. And it is something that is a lasting scar on a lot of families.
Yes,
that just aren't able to bring things to closure that they can deal with emotionally.
I told people in my will I want people to unplug me, wait 10 seconds, then plug me back in, see if I reboot.
Well, I'll have to ask my provider if she can do that as a test. So I'll see if she can bring me back from the brink, or I'm going to just change into vibrations that slowly work themselves into stardust in the universe. We'll see, but I will ask her.
Speaking of that,
by the way,
sorry.
Yeah, I have met my provider. And I had a lovely conversation with her, and I know who she is, and she knows a little bit more about who I am, so that at the time she comes to be able to deliver those 3 shots, I will feel at peace, because I know who she is and I know her heart, and it will comfort me to know that the level of her expertise and compassion is making it easy for me to make that transition. That's such peace of mind. It really is.
Speaking of dying with dignity, maybe I'll ask that to our American friends. What is the status of dying with dignity in the States? Anybody know by any chance?
Dying with dignity is, let's put it this way, our laws are based largely on the Bible, so people would like us to believe, and death with dignity is one of the few means of death that the Bible doesn't endorse. The Bible doesn't endorse any death that comes with an element of mercy attached to it. So if it's justifiable, then you can't do that.
Pretty much everywhere it's illegal.
We've lost all of our dignity down here anyway, so.
Hey, Darrel. Hey, Darrel, how are you, sweetie?
I'm doing super good. I'm thrilled to be able to have time to get in here. I'm going to have to leave pretty quick, but I wanted to hear your sweet voice.
No, that's too kind.
Thank you. It's good to hear yours, and you're going to be up here in another month or so. Next month, aren't you?
They canceled. No, they canceled.
Oh, they canceled,
Man, I was looking forward to that luncheon with them.
I was too, but we're gonna keep moving on. Religious trauma is an important concept that we need to get out, so we're gonna keep pushing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Especially right now when everyone's so isolated.
Yeah, you keep on trucking, Darrel, with everything you do. You're the best. We love you.
Well, thank you, Nancy. You're trucking pretty damn well too. I'm guessing. I don't know if I'll be trucking as well as you're trucking.
Oh yeah.
So everybody's affected by death in one way or another. Is there and for people that are listening to this podcast, which is our last one, is there any piece of advice you guys would give to the listeners out there on how they should face death? I know it's a very personal thing, but.
Well, this is Hector, Nancy, and if I may jump in, Kevin, by all means. I want to express why I find what you're saying so valuable. So I'm a clinical psychologist, and I've specialized in PTSD my whole career, almost exclusively with combat veterans who have faced their own death, faced the death of their comrades, and spent a lot of time writing about fears of death. And what comes to mind at this moment is this American anthropologist named Ernest Becker, who wrote this book called Denial of Death. And he points out that in Western society, we have sheltered ourselves from death so much. In the old days, my grandfather used to tell me that, when somebody died, the men all dug the grave and got their hands in it. And the family washed the body and put it in the earth, and the women all came by with a handful of dirt and put it in so they could be a part of it. Here, we're so detached from it. We have somebody with a backhoe dig the hole, and our bodies are all made to look beautiful by the the mortician, and it's just so sterile. And I think our religions even further us more from that process by telling us, no, in fact, we never die, So I think this fear of death comes from never having exposure to it, not knowing what to expect. And Kevin, you're right. The thing is, we're all leaving the party. We are all leaving the party at some point, and we're all going to face this. So what I love about it is that you are talking about your own process. And I think when it's my time to go, I'm going to do that so we can be open about death and share this experience with people. So it's not so terrifying, No. So that's what I.
No,
that's
it
what
isn't.
I like about it.
Yeah, it isn't. I mean, the terrifying part is ending up with the respirators and the tubes and the medications and the doctors using all their toys to keep people alive, and having to go through, I think what some religious people even call redemptive suffering. That's the hard part. The death, if it's an easy transition, is not to be feared. Leaving the party, it's to be, it takes you back a minute, but that's a natural course of life. Everything that is alive is born and dies and goes on to another phase, whatever that might be. And every time I would read something in the in news about people who were fighting death, I thought about fighting, and I realized that wasn't apt, because after I got into this process myself, having the luxury of being able to have medical assistance in dying, I found that once I embraced the process, once I understood it, and once I was more comfortable with dealing with other people whom I loved, my family and friends, the easier it has been to reach this point and not to have that level of fear. So thank you, Hector. I appreciate everything that you said. I've enjoyed talking with you so much on our podcasts, and somewhere I'll be looking down at all of you in whatever form I am. And
I think you'll be looking up, Nancy. You might be looking up
from her throne.
I just wanted to hop on that too. Yeah. Can I just? So this is Nikki. I actually just lost my mom about 3 or 4 weeks ago.
Oh my God, I'm so sorry.
Thank you. And I wanted to talk about that fear portion, because I think that is so important. To go back to the question of how atheism has affected, how I see death, how I experience death. It's been incredible, because I no longer wonder about what happens after. And I'm just so in tune with enjoying the present as much as humanly possible.
Yeah.
And being in the moment, so that I don't have to worry about what happens in 100 years, because I'm enjoying this now, and whatever that ends up being is whatever it ends up being. So I found that, my mom she had congestive heart failure, and then that turned into renal disease. And it was at a point where they were basically like, listen, we can keep giving you dialysis over and over and over and basically give you like some type of life until everything just falls apart. Or you can accept that, this is where you are and you would like to go without being in that much pain, and just make that decision. And she made that decision, and it took a while for like my aunts and my uncles to accept it, because all they saw was, I'm experiencing this extreme grief and I want her to be here. Why won't she just stay? And what I saw and what she was experiencing was, this was a person who was living life so big, so grand, enjoying the hell out of it, at a point now where all she can do is sit and watch HGTV all day. She's done, right? Like that's not the life for her. That's not what she wanted. And the atheism sort of helped me realize that like, all I'm here to do is to love her in the best way that I can, and do what I can to make this as comfortable for her on her way out. I don't get to dictate, Mom, no, you got to stay on dialysis. You got to keep doing this, and there's a chance of this and there's a chance of that. When people are ready to go because they see what's ahead of them and they've decided that that's not the life they want to live, you need to respect that. And sort of having that idea that it's not about religion where, you know, you've done something bad or you're paying for something or you just need to pray enough to make it better and something will come through, a miracle will come through. Instead, no, I've enjoyed the fuck out of this. And, oh, sorry. Drop that bomb. That's
Don't
so
you fucking swear my podcast.
And I'm ready to move on now to something else because this isn't it for me anymore. And I find that, Nancy, I love that so much because that's exactly what my mom just went through. And basically that's helped me now be even more like, even though it's devastating and it feels like you've lost like your best friend. And so there are times where you're just like beside yourself. Other times I noticed like at her funeral, which was an extremely religious funeral, but it was still beautiful. We got her a purple casket. This is like, just to give you an idea of my mom, she had a purple casket in which we put in the back of a horse and carriage that was like beautiful and like, yes. And went like seriously down a main artery in Tampa. Everybody's stopping to like see who the fuck is this being carried to their grave in a horse and carriage. But that's how awesome she was, like big until the very end. And it's like, that's what life is. It's about, fuck, I've enjoyed this. I'm ready to go now.
Oh, beautiful. Absolutely. That's a marvelous way to put it, and that you finally understood, you know, what it is that she wanted and honored that. That's so beautiful. That really is. That's just lovely. Thanks. Thanks.
I think one of the best quotes I've heard. Oh, sorry, am I interrupting somebody who just jumped in for a sec?
I was going to say something, but go ahead, Kevin.
No, go ahead, Doctor. You're by all means. You got priority or whatever stupid things I'm going to say.
Well, I just wanted to reflect on what Nancy said much earlier, and that was how you handled not telling people for 5 years, which that strikes me as incredibly. That shows an incredible discipline on your part. I'm sitting here thinking, I'd want to tell the fucking world about it, and I'm sitting here thinking, but she's right. It does change the nature of the relationships, and thank you. I have really not thought about that until you mentioned it just now. Well, thank you. That's really it's a good idea, and I admire your discipline. I'm not sure I would have that discipline.
Well, thanks for the compliment. I think it was more wimpy on my part because I didn't want to deal with the fallout. I thought it's easier to keep this to myself and not have to deal with that for 4 or 5 years of, gosh, is he still alive? How are you feeling? Have you been to the doctor? You look so good, which means that's the end. When people start telling you, look,
you don't want to be babied.
You might as well just crumble and choke yourself to death at that moment because that you look like you should be dead anyway. But thank you. It was so.
It's labor too. Yeah. It's labor. That's what it is. Like it's always having to do something every time you engage with somebody, and that can that just wears on you. It could anyway after a while.
Yeah. It does. And going back to what you were saying about your mother, my family, my brothers always encouraged me to go to to have chemotherapy, to think about that, to have whatever not cures, but whatever procedures there were. And I kept saying, my body is one that wants to be normal. I'm much better letting my body go through its own cycle than interjecting poisons in my life into my body that are going to shorten my life. And doggone, if I had chemotherapy or immunology therapy, which is the Keytruda, I would have been dead 3 years ago. I'm convinced that my body has kept me healthier by just doing nothing and allowing nature to run its course. But it's hard for the family to understand that, to have to put yourself through all those different procedures is, especially when you live by yourself. You just don't want to get up in the morning, between 2 and 3 o'clock, throwing up because of the side effects of some poison in your body. So I've been incredibly lucky, and I think I've made the right choices. Not everybody would agree with me, but I think I have.
Matthew, you said you wanted to say something?
Pardon?
I thought Matthew wanted to add something. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
No, it was Aron who did. Aron said he had something he wanted to contribute.
Oh, sorry. Aron, go ahead, but jump in.
Yeah, well, it was. I've been second guessing it because a couple of the things that I wanted to bring up are fairly dark. One of them, I guess, the lighter of them, was when my dad died. I mean, we know that, like a lot of people going through the corona thing right now, they're dying alone in a hospital bed and, on the wires and everything in an unfamiliar place and alone. And how terrible is that? And there's a lot worse ways to go. My friend D.P.R. Jones just died in January and unexpectedly just suddenly collapsed at his home dead. And then, somebody had to break into his house to find him, essentially. So that's not a way to go. But my dad, I was given a warning that you've got 2 days max to live.
Holy moly.
Wow.
Yeah, and so they've got him in a hospital. He's on a deathbed, and he knows he's going to go. And it was just enough time for his ex-wives and his collection of sons, and for everybody that he worked with, all the people that respected him, to all gather at his side at once to pay their respects to the man while he was still alive.
Mm-hmm.
That is absolutely the best way to go.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you can't get a better death than that. Now,
no.
Yeah, the worst one, and then the argument for death with dignity is, my granddaughter had an adult form of leukemia, and she had 2 relapses, and of course, with every relapse, the chance of being saved dramatically diminishes. That's a factor of evolution, by the way. And so there was a point where they tell my daughter to take her daughter home and just try to keep her comfortable for as long as possible.
Mm.
And what they're telling her to do is that there's a point where the little girl loses consciousness and goes to sleep, and there's a point where you know that she's never going to wake up again, but you still have to listen for days for the breathing to stop.
Oh.
The increasingly labored breathing. The agony of that. Just imagine. When we had a dog that had cancer, we took it to the vet, and everybody's petting and holding and loving the dog while they turn on the syringe, and the dog just goes down.
Mm-hmm.
And that's it. And we can't afford that to people. We make people suffer through listening to the baby.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
It's not just death with dignity, it's death with mercy.
Yeah.
Yes.
I agree.
Like, I know.
Agree. Yeah, Aron, I don't think that is too dark to bring up. In fact, that's precisely my point. I mean, the more we talk about these issues, the less terrifying they are to us. We need to understand and immerse ourselves in the process and learn from each other as we go through the process. So I'm glad you brought up stuff like that.
Yeah, me too. Thanks, Aron. Love to you, Liliandra. I'm so glad you're here with us today. Big hugs.
Well, thank you so much.
There's something, some aspect we don't talk about sometimes about death is how we face death. I mean, for example, when my father passed away 6 years ago of pancreatic cancer, I found out on my birthday that he was on his way out, and I had to fly back east. I landed on a Thursday, spent the day with him Friday, and Saturday he was gone. And I saw him die. But I preferred having this kind of visit to him, although it was incredibly short, and seeing him die myself, than my brother, who went there a couple of weeks before. He spent 2 weeks with him. But that moment when he had to leave and come back to his regular life, what do you say to a person who's dying like that? You know you'll never see them again. What do you say? Good luck with your death. What do you do? And that's something that kind of haunts me when you face death. I'd rather actually be there, hold their hand when they actually pass, than to just say, okay, well, it was nice knowing you. Not congratulations, but good luck.
Yeah.
Good luck. Hope you don't suffer too much. Anybody have any thought on these?
Well, actually, I do.
Okay.
Like, from my personal experience, this year will be 2 years of my grandpa's passing, and he basically raised me.
Mm-hmm.
And I know he was in the hospital for like months. He'd come home and less time each time be back in. And I know for one thing, when he finally did pass, it was like a huge weight had lifted off of my shoulders, because there was no, who knows what's going to happen tomorrow, who knows what's going to happen in the next hour. It was just final. There was no coming back from that. And I know for myself, like, I chose not to be in the room.
Yeah.
And I think, well, with the way things went, I was like, I don't want to be there. I've seen him.
That's perfectly fair, right? And you
exactly.
Remember him the way he was and not the way he...
And I know, like, Christina was my rock in that time. Like, I honestly don't know what I would have done without her, because everyone else was kind of leaning on other people. And it's just, it really kind of breaks you in a way.
It does.
And you just kind of have to put the pieces back together. I know I was back at work. I think I took, after that, I was off work for maybe 3 days afterwards, and I was back at work, and they're like, what are you doing here? I'm like, what else do you expect me to do? Yeah. Like, I'm here because I feel like I'm ready to go back to work. And of course I'm sad. And every time I would see somebody walk in the store wearing suspenders and a plaid shirt and jeans and a hat, which is a surprising number of people, especially when you work in a hardware store. Like, of course, every single time I would see somebody like that, it was like a stab to the gut. But it gets better over time.
Yeah, exactly. Well,
I know for myself, with death, it's something that I've thought a lot about, specifically around, like, what does it even mean to be alive, and, like, to be yourself, because with myself, I have a dissociative disorder that means that if I go to bed at night, I might not wake up as myself. Like, there's been times, because just for everyone listening, like, I have a dissociative identity disorder. So there have been times where parts of my brain have gone to sleep one day and they wake up 3 years later. And it's like, for them, it's like they didn't exist for 3 years.
They must be pretty well rested, though.
Yeah, right? Mad is more an apt term.
Yeah, it is.
For what they are. And it's like, what does it even mean? Sorry, I'm rambling now.
Ramble away, love.
Yeah, it's just really, really fascinating when you think about, like, what's the difference between, like, when you're 15 years old, that person isn't alive anymore. Like, that 15-year-old is, in essence, like, they're not there when you're, like, 30.
Yeah.
Like, there are aspects of them for, like, most people, but it's like life in itself is a sort of death.
Yeah. That's an interesting way to look at it. We seem to have an intimate relationship with death in many ways. I mean, we fear it, we accept it. I mean, even in some popular culture, it becomes a character in itself.
Yeah,
right. I mean, you have some cartoons where death is actually a character. You know, like a. So it's interesting to see the kind of relationships we have built over time with death. And maybe Dr. Garcia can speak to that. I mean, is there a reason why we treat death like a friend, Doctor? You know of anything in psychology that would say something like that?
I'm not sure about treating it as a friend, but I do reflect a lot about our fears of death, and they're just instinctive. I mean, it makes sense evolutionarily for us to fear death because those in our ancestry who didn't got weeded from the gene pool more often than those who did. So I spend more time thinking about those fears and where they come from, and you know, if you can gain that kind of reflective distance from death and see it that way and see your fears that way, I think it makes it more manageable.
Yeah.
And just like paying attention to what other thinkers say about death. No, please go ahead.
I'm sorry. I just was going to say I kind of have a story to relate about talking to kids about death because
wait a minute. Who allowed you on this podcast?
You,
Amy. No, just kidding.
Snuck in when nobody was looking. Yeah, I just snuck in.
You guys needed a better screening process.
Exactly, because we're both here. So.
It's an invasion.
It really is.
the border.
I'm very close to you. I'm in Minnesota. I could be there in a couple hours. Anyway, so as a parent, talking to your kids about death, I think is a real challenge, and a lot of parents deal with it differently. And it's something that we had to deal with when my oldest son was 9. My husband's niece, so this is, my husband's sister's daughter, just suddenly died when she was 18. And they never found out why. They couldn't find a medical explanation. It was just her heart just stopped. And so it's, that's hard enough, but you have to tell your child while you're grieving it, you have to explain to them what's happening in a way that isn't going to terrify them, but so that they know what's happening. And you have to do it without saying, well, they're off somewhere else now. They're in this different, they're in heaven, so it's going to be okay, and they're an angel. And I found, when we sat him down and just talked to him realistically and said, to me, I think one of the scariest things about death is not knowing what happens afterwards. So I sat him down and said, do you remember what it was like before you were born? And he said no. And I said, well, that's what death is like. It's okay. The people here are sad, but that person isn't experiencing that. They're okay. They're not, and I think when we talk to him realistically about it, and with our younger son, we've had a couple of pets that have died that we've had to talk about, and kids are able to absorb that information. And my mom and I have had discussions where she thinks it's just horrible that you would talk to your kids about death that way, because what hope does that give them? And she isn't religious, but she still clings to this belief that her mom and her brother, they're out there somewhere waiting for her. And she'll say straight up, I'm probably wrong, but that idea gives me comfort, and I'm just going to hold on to that. But she, when we talked about death one day and I told her how we were dealing with it with the kids, she just gave me this look like, that's horrible. Why would you describe it to your kids that way? But honestly, my children, when death comes up as a topic now, they are very able to process it, to understand what it means, to come and ask us questions about it. They feel free talking to us about it. But I think that's something that a lot of parents struggle with, is just, what do you say? It's not something you usually bring up unless something's happening. So
and it's wonderful that you're doing that, because it's a taboo. It's still one of the biggest taboos is talking about it. And I don't know, maybe Hector has some ideas, but there are a lot of people that don't want to go to counseling to talk about it. And there are dysfunctional families that don't want to get into it because it would be an argument. And then there are religious people who don't want to get into it because they're going to go to heaven, and that's it. So you have all of these diverse views, and no one brings them out into the open to deal with them before a death event occurs, and then everyone is stuck with all those emotions that have never been allowed to come to the surface and to have any rational thought about it, or at least, be able to know that it's okay to bring these thoughts, to the surface. And as a society, I guess that may be the last taboo that still needs to be dealt with on a societal basis. And maybe Hector will have some ideas on how that can happen, but I really feel it's just underdone. And we should correct it so that the younger generation deals with it a lot better. Like your son, they deal with it a lot better than we have been able to.
Well, and I think dealing with, especially with this family, it was a very religious family. My husband's whole family is Catholic, and it's been hard over the years. This happened about 5 years ago, so it's been very hard to watch my sister-in-law deal with this, because she spends so much time wondering why this happened, trying to answer that question. Why did this happen? Why would God do this to me? Why do I deserve this? And the answer is, there is no why. it happened. It's wanting to know what medically happened is one thing, but she wants to know why God would do this and what she did to deserve this. And you can't answer that question, so you torture yourself with it. And I wish there was a way for her to be able to, I guess, think about it that way, that there isn't a why. It's an awful thing that happened, and you could not have prevented it,
Mm-hmm. Well, in that respect, we have a certain advantages as non-believers, because we can talk openly about this when you have the conversation that no, in fact, you don't die. One day you're going to be floating in the clouds with all your dead relatives playing harps and stuff like that. This conversation ends, and it becomes unnatural and becomes just something that doesn't ever really happen. You don't absorb the reality of it.
Well,
so I do have these conversations with my children in a very open way, and surprisingly, they respond well to that. I've even kind of quoted Mark Twain, which you kind of talked about. Yeah. He said, "I don't fear death. I've been dead for billions of years before I was born, and I didn't suffer." And I talk about how we go back into the earth and we fertilize the earth and things grow out of us and life continues, and that's part of it. And because of that, you have to live every moment like it could be your last. Accomplish what you want to accomplish, see what you want to see, love the people that you want to love fiercely while you're here.
Well, and I think
they absorb it. Yeah.
It's a very cruel thing to, when this was happening, to witness all of the relatives just saying, this happened for a reason. She's with Jesus now. She's in a better place. God wanted her early. Just these things that are, it just made at least my husband and I angrier, and grieving more, because nobody wants to talk about the reality. They just want to talk about, well, I guess God needed an angel earlier. It's just so frustrating when you're dealing with a religious funeral. So
it kind of comes across in a way almost like they're putting a Band-Aid on it to cover it up.
Yes, exactly.
I don't know about you guys, but now that Nancy's always been known as our assassin on the show, every unexplained death from now on, I'm going to blame on her. So right off the bat, anything that dies in the world, it's Nancy's fault.
Just think of me as the eternal assassin. I'll always be here. So.
Am I the only one that feels like this whole thing is kind of about Nancy? Come on.
Jesus, yeah, right. You know what, Robert? You're so right. We haven't talked enough about you. We haven't talked enough about you, Robert. Why don't you tell us how you really feel?
Nancy. I just have a question, if that's okay. I never know what to say as an atheist. When I was a Christian, I always could say, God this, God that, whatever. I'll pray for you. It's so easy for them. It's really hard for me, and maybe I'm kind of alone in this, but I feel like it's a little more difficult for those of us that try to live by reason and science and not necessarily faith. Well, if you can answer this question, it's okay if you can't. But Nancy, what would you recommend to people that how do we say we love you and we're going to miss you, and we value the time we had together?
You just said it.
Well, I think in German you would say Ich liebe du, and in Russian it would be Я люблю вас.
No, you just said it. I think touch, a hug, the way you look at somebody. Sometimes when you love somebody, and if you love somebody and you give them a hug and you step back for a moment and you cup their chin in your hands and you look at them, and just that gaze and the touch means more than anything you can say. And then another hug, and that's what it's all about. It's that coming together, and knowing that we are all in this this is going to sound so trite, but that we are loved, that we are valued, and that we are sorry that we're not going to be part of each other's lives. I mean, you said it beautifully, Robert. You don't need to think of anything else except that and the power of touch.
Yeah, because if I've got a religious family, if I said what Aron said of Yella Bavava to my family, they just call an exorcist right off the bat right there. And
yeah.
Knowing you,
I
play
think
it up.
isn't it okay to say I don't know what to say? You know,
exactly.
I've had friends I have a friend who had a young child die, which is to me the most terrifying thing I can imagine. But going to the funeral, you know, we walked in and the friend just walked straight up to us, just crying, and just gave us long hugs. You know, that's all she didn't need us to say anything. She just needed that hug. Yeah. And we just said, I don't know what to say. This is awful, and we're here for whatever you need. That's all you can do sometimes.
Exactly.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, sorry.
Because we don't need we're verbal. I mean, here we are, we're podcasters, we're verbal. And when we can't find the word, it's harder on us because we are defined by how well we express ourselves. And yet, we don't need to. We just need to be a loving human being. And we know, without any words, exactly what you mean and what you want to express. So leave this silence between us as a mark of I understand where we are.
I'm a member of the VFW and a member of the ritual team from my local post. This is Matthew again, by the way. And I've had to do several, more than several wakes for people of the VFW who'd passed away. And so what I usually end up saying, because as an atheist, most of these people, you know, are at least, you know, they're societal Christians of some kind. And I usually say, you know, like, oh, at least he went quickly, or he's feeling no pain now, or something like that. I feel that, you know, for me as an atheist, I just can't say, well, he's dead and he's, you know, I just can't say that. But I can say...
It's definitely true. He's not feeling pain.
Yes. And that's why I say, well, he's no longer in pain. He passed quickly. Be thankful for that. You know, stuff like that. That's what I have been trying to say every time I've had to do something like this and, you know, express my condolences. That's how I express them.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, I'm running against the clock here. Nancy, thank you so much for doing this with us, and thank you so much for joining us all. But I want to open up one more thing and one last thing for you guys. If you wish to have any last messages, because this is our last show anyway, for a while anyway, for Left of the Valley. If you guys want, I just want to leave it open. If you guys want to say something to Nancy or to each other, by all means, feel free to say so.
On behalf of the Republican Party, I will thank you for freeing up our economy.
Man, that was awesome.
Yeah. That's it. Nothing else needs to be said. That's it. Thanks, Aron.
You're good.
Okay, I tell you what. Unless anybody wants to say anything, I'll take the burden off. I love you all. We love what we do. We will be able to come back at some point, I know, and even if we don't, the experience that we have had this last 6 years with you has been remarkable and wonderful and joyous and sometimes irritating, but always a pleasure and always something that we've looked forward to. It's been the high point of my life in many, many ways. I never would have met you, wonderful and entertaining and intelligent, remarkable people, and I will always treasure in this life or whatever is beyond the fact that you've enriched my life to a wonderful degree, and I thank you, all of you, from the bottom of my heart. And let's not say goodbye. Let's just say we'll be in each other's thoughts, we'll be in each other's minds, we'll be in each other's heart, and just leave it at that.
Love it.
Okay, I'm good with that.
Thank you, Nancy.
Thank you so much, Nancy.
Thank all of you. Love you all.
Thanks, Nancy.
Love you.
Thank you for everything you've done, Nancy. Really.
Does this mean we won the feud?
Oh, so
Oh no! So close to finishing a show without bringing that
Are
up.
you telling me you created the coronavirus just so we wouldn't be able to meet?
I think
Joke's on them. They're in the States.
we conclusively won this feud.
You did not. You so did not.
Sorry, that's what
Played
I'm
the
here
long
for.
game.
All right. Well, thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. Let's stay in touch. And in the meantime, from the bottom of my heart and for everything that you guys have done over the years, I appreciate that. And I don't know what else.
Awesome.
So we will keep Kevin in check.
Yeah, this is just Tracie. I just wanted to say I didn't really have anything to add to what everybody had said, but I did want to say that I feel really grateful that I was even invited on, and it was wonderful just to hear everybody express their thoughts and their different perceptions on this. So it was an honor to be here, and I'm just glad that I was invited. So thank you.
The honor was all ours, Tracie. The honor was all ours.
Yeah, I didn't get to talk, but I just wanted to say thanks, Nancy, and I'm glad I got to have the rest of the Left of the Valley on the show. Because I don't like to do the talking, I like the other people to talk. That's the whole point. So good luck with your trial by combat.
Yeah, exactly. All right, I guess there's nothing else to add. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. Until next time, I guess.
Peace and love.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank
Love you.
for this. This was
Bye.
Oh, God.
That was one hell of a send-off.
Yeah. For those of you out there that sometimes when you're getting into a funeral or you experience a death and you don't sometimes know how to handle it, this is what I did for my father's death. For my father's death, I basically reviewed a speech that was called "You Want a Physicist to Talk to You at Your Funeral," and I basically modified it to personalize it for the rest of the family. So I'm going to read this for you guys, and hopefully this will help you like it helped me for my own father. The speech goes, "You want a physicist to speak at your funeral. You want the physicist to talk to your grieving family about the conservation of energy so they will understand that your energy has not died. You want the physicist to remind your sobbing mother about the first law of thermodynamics, that no energy gets created in the universe and none is destroyed. You want your mother to know that all your energy, every vibration, every BTU of heat, every wave of every particle that was her beloved child remains with her in this world. You want the physicist to tell your weeping father that amid energies of the cosmos, you gave as good as you got. And at one point, you'd hope the physicist would step down from the pulpit and walk to your broken-hearted spouse there in the pew and tell him or her that all the photons that ever bounced off your face, all the particles whose path were interrupted by your smile, by the touch of your hair, hundreds of trillions of particles, have raced off like children, their ways forever changed by you. As your widow rocks in the arms of a loving family, may the physicist let him know, that all the photons that bounce from you were gathered in the particle detectors that are your eyes, that those photons created within her constellations of electromagnetic charged neurons whose energy will go on forever. And the physicist will remind the congregation that how much of our energy given off as heat how much all of our energy is given off as heat, that there may be a few fanning themselves with their programs, as he says it all, and he will tell them that the warmth that followed through your life is still there, still part of that we are, even as we who mourn continue the heat of our own lives. You want the physicist to explain to those who loved you that they need not have faith. Indeed, they should not have faith. Let them know that they can measure, that scientists have measured precisely that the conservation of energy and found it accurate, verifiable, and consistent across space and time. You can hope your family will examine the evidence and satisfy themselves that the science is sound and that they will be comforted to know that your energy is still around. According to laws of conservation of energy, not a bit of you is gone. You're just less orderly. and this is from Aron Freeman. And I hope this is a good piece of advice, and I hope that it will help you as you deal with your own personal losses.
Are you going to be okay there, Kev?
I don't know. I really don't know.
Just go cry. You're allowed to do that.
Yeah. Anyway. What else can I add to this, you know? I guess we just finish the show as we usually do.
Wash your hands. Stay inside. Social distance.
6 feet apart.
Fuck capitalism and eat the rich. There.
Talk about going out with a bang.
Well, thank you so much, guys, for joining on the show today, and thank you to Nancy, and thank you to all our guests.
And thank you for 6 amazing years.
Yeah, thank you for 6 amazing years, and you know,
talk to us on Facebook.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to leave this open to you, the listeners. If you guys want us to continue this show, I want to hear from you. Send us an email at letthatvalley@outlook.com.
When we can actually be in the same room again.
Yeah, or, you know...
Yeah, we're kind of breaking protocol here a little bit.
Send us a message on Facebook. I want to hear from you. I know our supporters, our Patreon donors are going to say, yes, of course we want you to continue. But I want to hear from you out there that hear us, you know, the in the void. You want us to continue this? Let me know. If I'm faced with the usual barrage of silence from you, then I will shut this down. But if you really want us to continue, I will continue this show. I will continue, even if we have to go on without Nancy and bring somebody else down the road, we will do so. But I want to hear from you. So until then, on behalf of Kirsten and Christina and Nancy, my name is Kevin Francis. Thank you so much for listening.
Au revoir.
I'd rather see the truth than to bask in my own ignorance. Rather be alone than surrounded by damn idiots. As long as there's a breath in my body.
I mean, over the years, some of the best moments we had on the show, some of the funniest moments we had on the show was from Nancy. I can still remember the time when, you know, we have this guest on, and she brought her 13-year-old daughter, and she's kind of intimidated. We're talking about Halloween stories, and she says, you know, and the mother turns to her daughter and says, you know, you want me to rock your sleep? And then Nancy just adds her witty self. She just adds, with a real rock. You know, this is just the kind of humor that's just unique to her, and it helped create the show, make it so unique. Some of the best, funniest moments we ever had on the show was when she would do another brilliant moment, and her top 10 was always something that people appreciated. Oh my God, my dear friend, I am gonna miss you so much. I miss you already, and it's taken just about every ounce of strength that I have not to break down on the show. So, Nancy, my dear friend, I'm gonna miss you so much.
Don't mean to sound so hateful, but I swear to God, unintended, I find it disgraceful that thousands of children are raped by priests, and since they're holy men of God, they get away scot-free. And the Pope does his very best to keep it on the hush. Don't wanna affect business, he loves money too much. We know that they love the kids, but how the fuck can we protect them while they planning to molest them? We teaching them to respect them. Respect them? Fuck that. The system is broke down, working backwards, and the only action or tactic I plan to practice now is to attack them. The parties of God's hands are bloodstained, millions of murders by believers, and they're all in God's name. And let me take a sec, don't mean to sound so hateful, but I swear to God, unintended, I find it disgraceful that many atheists are told to be quiet. You're not alone, speak your mind, time to let it be known. I'm proud to be an atheist, a skeptic, a non-believer, an infidel, a heathen, I call it how I see it. I say it's ignorance and you just call it faith, and unsubstantiated claims, that's something to be ashamed. I'm an atheist. Atheist, atheist.